Hello everyone and welcome back! We are now going to start a new section of the course where we will talk about user session management. We are going to switch to a new branch and we are going to talk about the need for user session management and what is a session ID and what problem does it solve. So at this point in the course we are able to create an user in the database, but what we need now is a way of keeping track which user is connected to the server, which user is making which HTTP request. For example, we would like here the lessons data to be protected so that it's only accessible to a user that is currently logged in. Let's then see how can we create a user session. For that, we are going to switch to a new branch. We are going to do git branch -r and we're going to switch to the free-login branch. So in order to check it out locally, we are going to do git checkout -b. We are going to call it free-login and we're going to link this local branch to the remote branch with the same name. After switching branches, we are going to run npm install again because we have a couple of new dependencies that we will be talking about further in this section. While the installation is running, let's have a look at a minor modification that we made to our test application. This is already in place in your branch, so you don't need to do these modifications yourself. In the next few lessons, we will be creating users a lot. Each time that the server restarts, because it's using an in-memory database, we will need to create a new user. So to make things simpler, let's do the following. Let's go here to the signup component and let's add a couple of hard-coded values here at the level of the form. So in the TypeScript file of the signup component, we're going to add here a default email. Let's make it test@gmail.com as usual, and we will be using the password 10 valid password. So we're going to put the same values here in the login form. So with these values in place also in the login form, now each time that we reload the application, we are going to have these forms pre-filled in. So if we want to create a user, we simply have to click sign up. We don't need to type this information each time. Once everything is installed, we are going to run in this first terminal window. We are going to run the server simply by doing npm run server, just like before. And once this secure server is running, we're going to open a new terminal using here the plus sign or Command T or Control T. And in this new window, we are going to run npm start so that we start the development server of the Angular CLI. Once our development server is up and running, we can refresh here our user session and we're going to see that we have here the data that is currently available to a user that is not yet logged in. So now what we're going to do is, after creating the user in the database, we are going to create a user session. So what is exactly a user session and what problem is it trying to solve? There would be a different way of authenticating a user and making sure that a given HTTP request, for example, made here by this browser instance, belongs to a certain user, which would be to send the username and password each time with each HTTP request. The presence of a username and password on each HTTP request, for example, using an HTTP header, would prove that the request came from someone that has the username and password, and that would be the user if the password was not stolen. The problem with sending the username and especially the password with each request is that we open up the door for the password being stolen because we are sending it over the wire all the time. So it might get logged in a server log, it might get intercepted. It just opens up a lot of possibilities for the password to be stolen. So here is what we are going to do instead, and this is the most common solution that you will find for authentication. We are going to send the password only once to the server. The server is going to compute a temporary expirable replacement for the password. It's going to create what we call a session ID that will then be attached to all the HTTP requests that the user will do. And then on future HTTP requests, simply by inspecting the session ID, we will be able to tell to which user the session belongs to. So let's see how can we implement this mechanism in a safe way. We are going to first implement this mechanism in a stateful way. This means that the server will keep track in memory of the ongoing user sessions, and later we are going to refactor this to be done in a stateless way where the server does not have to keep any state between requests. But first the stateful way, that it's still a very commonly used method in a lot of applications. We are going to go here to the sign up screen, and we are going to go back here to the create user route in our server. So currently we are simply creating here a user in the database with a given password digest. Now we also need to create a user session, and we need to attach the session to all the HTTP requests made by this user from this browser. The first thing that we need to do is to create a session ID. And the session ID needs to be something completely unguessable, because an attacker must not be able to guess a valid session ID or to guess the session ID of a given user. The best way to ensure that is to use a pseudo-random number, like the one that we have been using here for the salt. So as you can see, we were using here the crypto utility random bytes to generate a pseudo-random number with a given predefined length. We're going to be using the same mechanism, but notice here that we were using node callbacks. So this tends to create code that becomes very hard to maintain as we start nesting multiple callbacks like we are doing here. We're going to see a better way of doing this. We are going to be using the TypeScript async await functionality. Let's have a look at how that works. This is coming right up in the next lesson.